Again, I would like to remind you that all meetings are recorded and are available on our website where you can see them for about 90 days. We read the copyright notice. Recording, whether audio or video, is prohibited except by the St. Louis Genealogical Society, which has permission from the speaker. All slides and handout material are covered by copyright law. And I guess we don't have any handouts for this particular event. Or are we going to publish the questions and answers later?
Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Sort of depends on how things flow.
Okay.
The,
So,
the recording will have them, however.
yeah. So if you go to the recording, there'll be a link to download that. So you may download or print a copy of it for your personal use, but no portion of any of the material may be photographed, duplicated, or used in any way without permission from all of our speakers. So with that, I really am just going to turn it over to Carol, and Carol's going to give you any reminders. Our volunteers are very experienced. I had a whole thing written up here, so I'm going to read it anyway. They'll answer a wide variety of family history research questions and do their best to provide suggestions for finding the known and lesser known resources to help you get started in your research or to break through those stubborn brick walls. They each have their own area of expertise. Please use the Q&A feature to submit your questions. And without further ado, Carol, I'm turning it over to you.
Okay. And first thing I'm going to do is ask Eileen, are there any questions in the Q&A already?
Yes, we actually do. And this is a long one. And I think, Robin, you're going to want to unmute because this is going to be for you, but I think several of the rest of us can probably help too. So Keith says he has a few questions tailored specifically for African American genealogy. He's seeking help to unlock local St. Louis library resources. He's tracing ancestors who may have lived in Mississippi, Alabama, and surrounding states. He's got 4 parts to his question, so we can do them one at a time. Number
I'm
one,
looking
and
at them.
think, okay, Robin, this is going to be you. What
Okay.
local St. Louis library collections can help trace African American ancestors who migrated from Mississippi or Alabama to St. Louis during the Great Migration from 1910 to about 1970?
Okay, so I'm going to just go down the line here and I will give you just, briefly information from sort of the library end of it. And then if anybody else wants to jump in, please feel free. So question number 1 with St. Louis County Library Collections for African American ancestors, and this is going to be Great Migration. So this is going to be 1910 to 1970. So for that, I would definitely, because we're in the age of censuses and all kinds of things that you can find on the databases. So I'm not sure if this particular researcher, I'm not sure what he has been doing thus far, but I would say very important to mine everything that is coming up on these family members in Ancestry. So if you don't have, this is for anyone too, if you don't have your own Ancestry.com account, the library does provide Ancestry Library Edition, which would have access to all of those census records and things like that for at least to kind of begin this research. Also, FamilySearch.org is going to be another one to dig in on maybe specific records from certain counties. And we are a Family Search affiliate library. So if there's anything that you can't see at home, you would be able to see that at the library. So when I talk about Family Search, I don't necessarily talk about searching for a person by name, although that can be helpful. You could see if other people in the tree, are researching that person, and some records will come up. But the catalog, where you're drilling down to a particular place, like Tishomingo County, Mississippi, for example, and you can see exactly what records they have, marriage records, things like that for that county, would be very helpful. Keeping in mind also that Family Search on most of their record sets now have full text searching, so that is going to be helpful as well. Number two, St. Louis-based resources help identify enslaved African Americans before the 1870 census. So this is always a tough, definitely advanced type of genealogy research because the regular methods aren't going to be effective. It's going to be drilling down to, possibly plantation records or, wills and things like that. I do want to mention, though, that the library has some tools for you that I would like you to check out if you aren't aware of these. So on our YouTube channel, and you can get to these either just the St. Louis County Library YouTube or on our virtual classroom on our website. We have a series of 4 programs that you can watch for doing African American genealogy. One is just a beginning course, but then we have 3 others that are more advanced. And the last one does go into looking specifically at records pre-1870. So I would definitely recommend watching those. There was an employee, a staff member here at the History and Genealogy Department who is now retired, but he was an expert in doing this African American research. And so we've saved those videos up there because they are still very relevant. Also, one other thing I wanted to mention, when you're dealing with the time period, say like 1864, 65 to 1870, there are also things out there such as Freedmen's Bureau records, Freedmen's Bank records, things like that. It really kind of just depends on what state, and a lot of those things you can find online as well. Another important one, because about 200,000 Black men enrolled in the Union Army. Getting pension records and things like that for those individuals are fantastic sources of information too. So looking at that would be good as well. I also want to mention that we have some programs coming up in February. One is just a beginning African American genealogy course that is taking place at the Lewis and Clark branch in February. But then we're bringing in a speaker, LaDonna Garner, who is a professional genealogist, and she will be talking about specific issues for African American research. That is going to be a virtual class over Zoom. That would be a fantastic one for you to attend. And I was in the process of looking up the exact date for that class right before I started talking. So if anybody else on the panel wants to go on our website, that should be showing on our events and classes. If anybody else wants to chime in with the date of that program, that would be great. Number 3, African American resources, local resources. So churches, funeral homes, community organizations. So cemeteries, if you have, and the St. Louis Genealogical Society is involved in this too, cemeteries like Washington Park, other St. Louis area cemeteries, there are records for those, funeral homes as well. We have some, I know that the society has some of these things indexed, so you might want to check on their website for that. I don't know that we have any specific African American church records in the library, so you might need to contact churches for that. Go ahead, Kathy.
We probably have some of those as well. We have a lot of churches out there, but.
Okay. Perfect. And then as far as just community resources, there is a St. Louis Historical and Genealogical Society, St. Louis African American Historical and Genealogical Society. They meet once a month on Saturdays at the Missouri Historical Society's library. Or they might meet at the museum. I'm not sure if they meet at the museum or if they meet at the library. But if you haven't checked them out, they bring in speakers, and that would be a great place to ask specific questions about African American research as well. They have a Facebook page, so you might want to ask to be admitted to their Facebook page too. And then African American newspapers, oral history collections, or vertical files. So we don't really have vertical files per se anymore. We definitely may have some print materials that may help you. Oral history collections, we don't hold at the library. So it would be, something that you could find online. But I have researched African American ancestors for people. And I have found some great oral history collections for some other states. And then as far as African American newspapers, there are some that are digitized. The St. Louis Argus comes to mind, and there are a couple that we also have on microfilm. And you can find that on our website too. But the Argus was one of the biggest ones, and some of that is digitized, although I'm not sure exactly what years on that.
Robin, your beginning African American genealogy is on Thursday, February 12th from 6 to 7 at the Lewis and Clark branch.
Okay. And what about the LaDonna Garner's talk? Do you see that one on there?
I see that one Wednesday, February 18th, 6
Yeah.
to 7 p.m.
Yeah,
Okay.
unique issues for African American genealogy research.
Yes.
Okay,
So
and-
that one probably covers everything in this in this Q&A. So I would
Okay.
definitely tune into that one if you can.
I'd like to also mention that the St. Louis Public Library, which is a different library than St. Louis County Library, has a huge African American collection, and someone who is interested in that kind of research should get on their website as well. Plus, I might mention that LaDonna Garner used to be the head of our African American SIG, but she no longer lives in St. Louis, so that's a little difficult for her to do.
Yeah, and I'd like to add also that if you're using Family Search, one of the best parts of that website is their wiki. And if you use the Family Search wiki to look for African American genealogy, it's going to give you links to just dozens and dozens and dozens of records and state organizations and all kinds of stuff. And it's totally free.
And one more thing I want to add, and then I know we probably need to move on. Carol mentioned the St. Louis Public Library. If you are local and you do want to visit them, they are located downtown. Their central branch, that is where their history and genealogy department is.
Okay. One more thing, Robin. Keith says thank you. And he also wanted to know if the library can help him use technology such as genealogy databases, DNA interpretation tools, or mapping software to connect African American families across Missouri, Mississippi, and Alabama.
So genealogy databases, an enthusiastic yes. DNA interpretation tools. So unfortunately, our DNA expert has taken a position elsewhere, and he's going to be leaving us at some point here. So DNA interpretation, probably not as strong on that. The mapping software, I may be able to, that may be a thing, but yes. So, but definitely the databases for sure.
And
Jump in, Carol.
also, the St. Louis Genealogy Society has plenty of people who can help you with both the genealogy databases and DNA and technology.
And mapping as well.
And mapping. So if you come to our office, the other Jim Bellinger, is one of our experts on DNA and also on mapping.
Okay, we have one more question from home. Jerry says he has an ancestor who served at the St. Louis Arsenal during the Civil War. Is there a source that he can use to find more information about him specifically and more generally about what service was like in St. Louis at that time? Jump right in there, people.
I can jump in. We have several books in our collection at the St. Louis County Library on the Civil War in St. Louis. St. Louis was an absolutely fascinating place to be, right at the beginning of the Civil War. So we have several books, and also you can find out information on your soldier from places like the Civil War Soldiers and Sailors database. And there are several other out there where you can find information about your specific soldier. I took a soldier of mine who was also stationed at the Arsenal. He was a German recruit right as the Civil War was breaking out. He did a 3-month enlistment, and I was able to find out enough information about him and his unit that I was able to kind of track his movements in Missouri just in those 3 months. So there is definitely a lot of information out there. I would maybe consider starting, like I said, with some of the books we have in our collection about the Civil War in St. Louis.
Also, the Jefferson's Barracks Museum has a lot of information on the Civil War and service members who served in it, and they can probably refer you to other places in St. Louis that will have information. The Soldiers and Sailors Monument may have Civil War veterans in it as well. That's another place in St. Louis that you would like to look at. You'd have to go on the websites of those institutions to find out when they're open, and whether or not a Civil War person will be available at the time. The barracks museum has limited hours, but it's a really interesting museum.
Yes, it was. Okay, so anybody else with that one? Okay, just want to say that Keith said we are all so kind. Thank you, Keith. And he thanks us for the wealth of responses and information because it's giving him a great start. And Happy New Year. So that's good. And Jerry says, thank you, Robin. That's good info. John says, 2 things on Alabama research. I have many ancestors from there. The Alabama Genealogy Society in Birmingham has a great website with lots of information. Also, the Winston County Archives, run by the Winston County Genealogical Society, has its own building and lots of information. They are very helpful and have many resources, and I know they recently added some African American records. So I think the takeaway from that also is not to forget that there are local genealogy societies in cities and counties everywhere that can help you with your research, no matter where you're researching. And it's a good thing to reach out to those local societies. So I think that's right now what we've got from, Jim Bellinger says, hi, Jim. He just bought a book at Walgreens called St. Louis in the Civil War, and it has a lot of nice pictures. Also, the Arsenal is still there and is part of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, where he worked for 35 years. Thanks for giving us that.
Okay, if we're out of questions
Nope,
online,
we're not.
Oh.
We're not. No, people at home are they're with us here. Hold on a second.
We do have
Okay.
people who wrote in questions ahead of time just for this too. So some of the ones that are on our prepared sheet are from people who wanted them answered.
Okay, what I was thinking we ought to do, since we have mentioned maps, Jim Ross had a question that he was going to answer on maps. So let's move to Jim and let him answer the question about maps.
Hello. Okay, so one of the questions that was sent in was from somebody who said they were looking for a map of St. Matthew's Cemetery on our website, but it's difficult to see. And is there a better way to view maps of cemeteries on our website? So I'm going to share my screen and give a super fast demo of how to see maps on our website. Okay. Okay. Okay, so here is on our website, our page, our St. Louis area cemeteries list. And I will come back to how I got to this page. So let's first talk about what we see here. So here is a alphabetical listing of every St. Louis cemetery that we have identified so far. And if we scroll down, we see on the left side, some of them are blue linkable, and some of them are just have black text. And so if it's a blue one, that means we have a dedicated page with history of that cemetery, possibly a link of people buried in it, and general information like that. Way up on the right side, we see that some, but not all of them, have a map link. And so if you see a map link, that means that this particular website does indeed have. So the question was about St. Matthew's. So I'm going to scroll way down here to St. Matthew's. So here it is. It's on Bates. And so if I come over and click on the map link right there, it's going to take me to a page looks like this. So this is the first thing I see. If I scroll up a little bit, I see indeed it's St. Matthews. And if I scroll down here, I see a Google Map image with this superimposed map. And so the person who wrote in is basically saying, this is hard to read. So what, how can he better navigate this? The first thing I would recommend right here in the upper right-hand corner is this button here, full screen. So I'm going to click it. And so now I have a full screen view of the map. And notice over here in the upper left-hand corner, there's a plus and a minus button. So this is a zoom. So the plus I can zoom in, the minus I can zoom out. And so if we zoom way in, you start to see that this particular map is fairly detailed, and it's a fairly big cemetery. I can drag, if I grab my mouse and click and hold, I can drag it around to see different parts. I can, by the way, I'm also can zoom out by scrolling my mouse wheel. And so to get the big picture here, we see, I've zoomed way out so we can see the whole cemetery. A couple other things you can do is, so this down here in the lower left, this is this opacity slider. And so it's all the way to the right here. If I click, I'm right down here. If I click and drag and slowly move it to the left, the map starts to fade away. And if I go, it can fade completely away or completely in. And it can be helpful if you're trying to identify current locations to sort of go halfway. And then also to find current locations, it's helpful up here in the upper right-hand corner. There's a map button and a satellite button. So if I click on the satellite button, so now we see the Google Map view that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, or I'm sorry, Google Satellite view. And so again, let's zoom in a little bit. And let's take our opacity slider and, sort of slowly fade in and fade out. In this case, the map, this is a working cemetery. And so the map provided by the cemetery does a pretty good job of matching reality or current reality. But some of the cemeteries are gone or significantly changed. And so when you zoom out or fade it, you'll see that there's no longer a cemetery there. There's houses or parking lots or the like. So hopefully that gives some hint of ways to better see these maps. Let's just do one more example here. If I fade out, this particular cemetery doesn't have a lot of buildings, but you can see if I up here, and there's the office. And I'm going to quickly show you one more aspect of our cemeteries, which is, first of all, I promised to show you how I got to this, this page. And so at the top of the website, if you go to research, if you hover over research and scroll down to life and death, and then scroll over to cemeteries and click, it's going to take you to this page, which has a lot of information about cemeteries in general. And there's a link here to the cemeteries list, which takes you to that page. And then you saw how I got to the map over here. The last thing I'll point out is let's go here. Let's go to the top again. One more thing about maps and cemeteries is if you go back to research and community and then maps right there and click on that, it's going to take you to our master maps page where we have all kinds of maps information. And this bottom link here, web map links, is going to take you to all of our maps by groups. So not just cemeteries, but we see churches of many denominations. Scrolling down, here's the cemeteries. We also have hospitals, funeral homes, old St. Louis maps. And so when we're talking cemeteries specifically, because that was the original question, it's going to take you to this, as we patiently wait. Here we go. So here's a zoomed out view of the entire St. Louis metro area. And just to call your attention to this legend down here in the left corner, we see red ones represent open cemeteries that have a map. Black is open but don't have a map. And then we have two different flavors of yellow, which are closed cemeteries, both with and without maps. And so, like before, we can zoom in and see, so here is the very St. Matthews we were just looking at, yellow. So here's a yellow one that I can click to see maps of other cemeteries. And so that's so we have on our website for maps, cemetery specific.
Jim Bellinger wanted to add that on each of the maps on the bottom left corner, there's a link to the original map image that was either given to us or that Jim found.
So on each of the maps, let's go back to
so if you go way down to the bottom left of that map, and you can see, there's the original map.
Yes. Oops. But not that one.
But not that one, right?
Yes. So, shout out to my colleague Jim Bellinger, who actually did all this work and is a expert geospatial genealogist. And so, check out the original maps down in the lower corner, and that's what I got.
Okay. While we have a second, Jim Bellinger also wanted everybody to know that there's a link to a book on the Arsenal Street Armory on Amazon, and I'm going to put that into the Q&A. So if you're interested in that, it'll be there.
Okay. Do we have other questions?
Not from home at this point. So if you want to deal with one of the ones that we've prepared, go for it.
Okay. Let's go to Debbie. Debbie, are you still here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good. We're going to go to Debbie and divorce records.
Thank you. You can't see me, but hopefully you can hear me. So one of the questions that we received is from a person who said, I am searching for the divorce record of an ancestor who lived in St. Louis. Is there an online database or index of divorce records? And the answer is no. And this is, I will say, a question that we get every now and then, so it comes up. There is no online place where you can go to get divorce records. However, the records are available at our local courthouses. One thing that you need to know is that we have two separate court systems in the St. Louis area. There is a court system for St. Louis City, and there's a court system for St. Louis County. So it's possible for your ancestor, and this split occurred in 1876. So anything before 1876 would all be within St. Louis County, because that's the only thing that existed at that point.
City.
I'm sorry, St. Louis City, because that's what existed at that point. And then after that, there was the separation. So any records could be either in the records of St. Louis City courts or St. Louis County courts. So you would have to search in both places. I'm going to give you the information. The divorce records are kept in a court file at the courthouse. The person at each courthouse that keeps these records is the circuit clerk's office. And so what you would need to do is you would need to contact the circuit clerk's office in either St. Louis City or St. Louis County and request the information. If you give them the name of your ancestor, they'll do a name search to see if they can find the record and the court file. If it's from some time ago, then the court file is probably in storage. And so they would need to request that court file from storage and have it sent over to the courthouse. Once the court file is sent to the courthouse, then you would be able to get access to it. And you could take a look at it and you could make copies of any documents from the court file. In St. Louis City, the courthouse is located downtown in the Civil Courts building. And the contact number for the St. Louis City Circuit Clerk's office is area code 314-622-4433. And I'm going to repeat that again. The telephone number is area code 314-622-4433. In St. Louis County, the courthouse is located in Clayton, Missouri. And there, in order to get the record, you would contact the Certified Copies Department in the St. Louis Circuit Clerk's office. And their telephone number, this is for St. Louis County, is area code 314-615-8015. And I'll repeat that again. This is it for St. Louis County, area code 314-615-8015. So I hope that's helpful for everybody in terms of where to go to search for a divorce record of an ancestor. The other thing I might mention just briefly is there was a period of time, kind of in older times, when that kind of information was also published in newspapers. So if you have access to newspapers.com, either through a private subscription or available through the library, you might want to do a search on newspapers.com and see if the name of your ancestor shows up, because who knows, there may be something showing up with information about a divorce record that would show up in a local newspaper. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to add to that there was also a period of time when 1876 wasn't exact. If the person lived in the county, they might have been recorded in the city. And if they lived in the city, they might have been recorded in the county. And that might be because the church that they attended was in the other place. So look both places.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We have a question from John, who's
Good
wanting
advice.
to know. Yeah. John wants to know if anybody has found genealogybank.com a useful site. And Kathy says that she'd like to deal with that. So Kathy, go for it.
Thank you. Yes, I use Genealogy Bank because the newspapers that I want from the Eastern Shores of Maryland in the early days are on that site. And so it's really whether you like the selection newspapers. And that's the ones I need, and that's the only place they are. So So I use that, genealogybank.com.
I agree with that. I have used Genealogy Bank for the East Coast, but I also use newspapers.com for places like Iowa. So it depends on which is which that you need.
Yeah. I think the important part of this is we get these questions all the time. It's like, do you like this website, or do you like that website, or is it worth my money for this one or that one? And honestly, it depends on what you're looking for, because there are some things you can find on one site that you can't find on another. Some things that I might find very valuable that Kathy can't use, or vice versa.
Right.
So, if a particular site has what you need, then it's definitely the site you want to support versus one that perhaps doesn't.
Okay, do we have any more online questions, Eileen?
Not at the moment.
Okay, so let's go to the land grant question, which
Okay.
Eileen is going to answer.
Okay, so this was so much fun. It doesn't take very much to get me excited. Sorry. We had a question. Let me get the original question. That said, what was the original question? Oh, here it is. Okay. I have a question concerning a land grant purchased by my fourth great grandfather in 1856 for property located in Jefferson County, Missouri. And I'm trying to understand why the government was giving land grants in this area. So our first thought when we looked at this is that, well, the government was giving out land grants because generally there wasn't enough money to pay all the soldiers from all the wars that had gone on previously. And so the government was handing out land. But I had never heard of the government handing out land in Jefferson County, Missouri. That was a strange place for that. So I started digging and I found some fun information. So I'm going to share this with you. In 1785, the Public Land Survey, the PLS system, began as a way to map all of the available land in the new country. And within a few years, Western land was being sold and used by the new federal government to raise money. It was also a way to pay soldiers for their service and to encourage westward migration. And 30 states have land in the PLS system, including Missouri. The question says a land grant was purchased, which leads me to wonder if this was a secondary sale, because land grants were given to people, but warrants could be sold. So for those of you who don't know, the warrants were the first step. And to receive federal public land, a person had to apply for a certain number of acres. The person was the warrantee, the document was the warrant, and warrants could be allocated to other people or sold. And then once a warrant was approved, it was exchanged for a patent, which was the equivalent of a deed or a title. And the person receiving the patent was the patentee, and the document itself was the patent. Okay, so that was my first thought. And I thought, okay, well, that's logical, but it still didn't really answer the question. And then I went a little bit further, and here's where this got really interesting. There was federal land or public land that was offered for sale in Jefferson County for 4 different reasons during that time period, only one of which was for military service. So, the other 3 ways, the United States land sales were standard cash or credit sales of public land to individuals, and records for these sales typically exist from 1818 to the early 1900s. Number 2, or actually 3 if you consider the military, swamp land grants. Under an act of Congress in September 1850, the federal government granted swamp and overflowed lands to states to be sold for funding levee and drain projects. Patents for these were issued by the state of Missouri between 1850 and 1945. And then the last one, the federal government granted 500,000 acres to the state of Missouri in 1841 for internal improvements, which the state then sold off with patents that were issued from 1843 all the way to 1951. So any one of those reasons could be why this person's fourth great grandfather was issued patents or purchased land in Jefferson County, Missouri. So to find records of the federal land grants or sales for a specific individual or parcel in Jefferson County around 1856, you can check the Bureau of Land Management General Land Office records, and I have a class on that listed that's up on our website, and you can go to that and watch it and get all the links and whatnot. The Missouri State Archives has land records for the patents issued by the state, like the swamplands and U.S. land sales, and their searchable database includes more than 280,000 entries, and you can search the land records database via the Missouri Secretary of State website, which is sos.mo.gov. And then the Jefferson County Recorder of Deeds has land transactions between individuals after the initial federal or state patent was issued. And you can check the county office where the property is located, and also the Jefferson County Historical Society website has a menu for local land records. So I found that very interesting. Let me see what Kathy wants. What? Oh, Jim, just speak up, guys. Okay.
Those are for future questions.
Oh, that's a future. Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to like keep up. Just like you all just say what you need to say when we get there. All right. Anybody else and want to drop in there with the land? Okay. All right. Donna McGee, you're very welcome. All right. We have a question from Laura at home who says, my great-greats, according to the 1880 census, lived on Summit Avenue. I can't find Summit in St. Louis. Is there a place that shows street names that have been changed? Jim Ross, jump in there.
Summit Avenue is in Webster Groves.
Right, but Jim had something that he sent to me. Unmute yourself.
Okay. Yeah, so there is a Summit Avenue in Webster Groves. Also, I have this great book, which won't come into focus, but it reads it's The Streets of St. Louis, A History of St. Louis Street Names by William and Marcella Magnum. And according to the index, Summit was renamed to California.
Oh, in the city of St. Louis?
In the city.
Oh, so it could be either location. And Jim Bellinger, who is at home, says almost all current parcel data is open to the public on a county website. And you might need to clarify that if Laura needs more help on that.
I'm going to jump in just really quickly. There is also, which I've discovered recently, we have that book as well. We have a circulating copy, and then we also have a copy just behind our reference desk because people often ask for it. But there's also an online version of that book. It's not the whole book, but and I can't remember who put that out there. But I'll see if I can find it before the end of the talk. But you can also find a lot of information about name changes online as well. And I'll see if I can.
You're right, Robin. I know that. And Laura says thank you because they did live in the city of St. Louis and not in Webster Groves. So thank you, Jim.
That's good.
Yeah. All right. Nothing else at home at the moment.
Okay. Robin, there's a question about how-to videos at the St. Louis County libraries that you were going to answer.
Oh, okay. So I mentioned with the first question, I mentioned a set of videos that we have on our virtual classroom for doing African-American research. We have many of other videos as well. But I will tell you, we are in the process of updating that. So if any of the links don't work from our website, it might be because we have taken the video down from YouTube. A lot of our videos we have a lot on there, but some of them go back to 2020. And if you've been doing genealogy, we all kind of know that things change and you have more that comes online and sort of that changes the methods and things like that. So we've been kind of trying to clean that up a little bit. So if there was a video that you had seen and it is no longer there, that might be why. And we are making a real concerted effort in 2026 to any new videos that we do, any new classes that we do virtually, making sure they get up there so people have the most current, genealogy methods and information. Two ways to get at our videos. One is on our website. If you just go to the SLCL.org website, and if you put in the search, there should be a search bar up in the top right corner of your screen. If you just put in virtual classroom, and you have to move the toggle from catalog to website because you don't want to search that in the catalog, you want to search that on the website. You'll get a list of videos we have, but that list is not all inclusive because we also have a YouTube channel, and sometimes the videos just go right up onto the YouTube channel and we don't put them in the virtual classroom with a link. So if you go to the library's website, slcl.org, and up in the sort of the top left corner, you have all of the symbols for all the social media sites, and the one that looks like a little sort of player, like video player, that's YouTube. So if you click on that, and if you look for the history and genealogy playlist, that's actually where you'll find everything, that all the videos that we have. But again, we are trying to clean that up a little bit. So just be patient. We're trying to get newer versions and take down older versions of the videos.
Okay. Jim Bellinger has given us a link to the Jefferson County parcel search. So if you're looking for a particular piece of land in Jefferson County, it's in the answered questions section. So you can just go over there and pull that out. Kyra wants to know how would you know if it's worth making a trip to Salt Lake City to do research there? How do you know what is held there that is not already available online? Great question, Kyra. Carol, do you want this or you want me to do it?
You can go ahead.
Okay, so we do an annual trip to Salt Lake City every fall, usually October. And we do it because there is so much in Salt Lake City that you cannot get online. And even though more and more is going online, it will never all be there because of copyright restrictions. So the Family History Library in Salt Lake City is the largest genealogical library in the world. It is 4 floors completely devoted to nothing but books, computers, a very limited amount of microfiche and film now because it's almost all gone. There are some things for which copyright restrictions keep them from putting online, and some things for which they will never get permission because of the contracts that they had to sign to film and or digitize those things. The advantage of being in Salt Lake City is uninterrupted time to just work on genealogy and get help from people who do genealogy over and over and over again. There is an entire floor of books that is, I don't know, like maybe a mile long when you go up and down all of the aisles. There are several floors of networked computers. There is a collection of old CDs that have been put online that have now been usurped by digital subscriptions to dozens of sites that you may or may not be able to subscribe to and or get at local libraries. And in the last couple of years, there are also interpreters that are available for all kinds of languages, including the standard, German, Spanish, French, Italian, but also unusual languages, so that if your people came from China or Japan or Indonesia or just odd places that perhaps we don't always think about, there are interpreters there that can help you with those records. Carol or Kathy or Jim, you've all been there. Do you want to jump in and add to that?
It's a really useful place to research if you haven't looked at a lot of old books. And it's also good for if your microfilm isn't online somewhere, it may still be at the Family Search Library. It's just that they can't put it online. So you might want to check out the catalog and other things. There are other parts of the catalog. There are now records and images and full text search. Those are all listed on the same search section that the catalog is listed under. And you need to try all of those. And it's sometimes easier to do that when you're actually at the Family Search Library, because those people can help you better than some of us can sometimes.
I would add that to find out, because part of her question was, how do you find out that it's going to be something that you have to go there to see? You would use the catalog. And there's so much more to the catalog now than there was when I first learned. But when I first learned from Bob Good how to search the catalog, search catalog, and then go by place and see everything that they have for the place that you're looking for. And then you can look at each item and you can do WorldCat to see if it's near you. And if it's online there, you can tell that it's online there. But if it's a book, if you see it's a book and it's only there, or it's there and it's in, Minnesota. But if the St. Louis County Library has it, that'll show up within the radius that you put in for WorldCat to search what else they have anywhere near you. If that book is located anywhere near you, is what I'm trying to say. So the catalog and searching the catalog will tell you what they have. Then it's up to you to find out if it's anywhere else.
And
Okay.
if it's not indexed, you use the images section, because that's where the full text search is indexing things. To see if it's going to be indexed, you can use the records section to get the collections. They've made themselves a number of collected things together, like they collected all the German church records together that they had, and that's a index, which you used to have to browse, but now you can look at it with an index and search in it. So all of those ways to get at it will give you some information on whether or not it's actually there or was ever there for you to look at.
Yeah.
If it was ever there, it will still be there somewhere.
Yeah. Our annual Donna Filch has just reminded me to tell you the dates. Our annual research trip for Salt Lake City this year will be October 11th through the 18th. One of the advantages of going with our group is that we have pre-trip meetings. We will answer all of your questions. We will give you guidance. We will show you how to use the catalog. We'll hold your hand if you need hand holding. And we'll be with you the entire week to help you with your research. And so generally all of us find that we can accomplish so much more by just a concentrated 5, 6, 7 days of sitting in the library and focusing on our research, as opposed to sitting at home and answering the phone or texting or answering the doorbell or getting up to get a drink or, whatever. And that in itself, and being with other people who understand that your eyes will light up when you find great grandpa, as opposed to, oh yeah, honey, that's fine, and that works out too. Okay, so Kyra says thank you. I'm glad we were able to help you, Kyra, and talk to us if you're thinking about going and you have questions. Don't hesitate to just, fire off an email to us or call the society office, and one of us will be happy to talk with you.
Or come in and ask a question, and like we can show you how to use all of the different things besides the catalog that are important.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. John, I'll answer your question in an email because yours is very specific to our website. So just so you know.
Other
Carol,
questions?
we have, I'll answer John. Do you want to
I've got some more.
field some? Yeah, go
Yep,
for it.
okay. So Robin, we also had a question about the difference between the library version of Ancestry and newspapers.com and the paid version.
Perfect. Okay. Let me just start by saying if you are looking for a quick reference on a St. Louis street, like if you suspect it may have changed names, the list that I was thinking of is part of Steve Morse's website. So if you've ever used that for his census finder, enumeration district finder, there's also on there, he has a list of St. Louis area street name changes. So you can easily find that just by Googling like street name changes, Steve Morse. It's Morse. So that's just the list I was thinking of there. Okay, databases. So let's take Ancestry. Many people, myself included, and I even work at the library. I have my own Ancestry account, ancestry.com. It's pricey. But I want to be able to do my genealogy when I want to be able to do it. And I have my tree on there. And so I use ancestry.com. And I have my own subscription. However, that's not for everyone. Some people might not want to pay that. Not quite sure if it's a hobby that you're going to enjoy doing. Or you just like to do it on the weekends or something like that. You don't need to necessarily do it at home. Maybe you want to get out to the library and use Ancestry. So that's why the library has what's called Ancestry Library, which is a form of Ancestry that they sell to libraries, and it is a public edition. So people can come in, use it. You can't use it from home, unfortunately, with your library card, but you can use it in any of our 20 branches. And all of our neighboring libraries have it as well, St. Louis Public, St. Charles. If you're watching from afar, your local library may have access to it also. But there are going to be some differences as far as it's not going to be personalized to you. So if you have your own account, you can create your own tree, you can save records, you can receive leaf hints, you can message people on Ancestry. You won't be able to do that with our version because it is just a public version. But it is equivalent to the World Explorer Edition. So it does have, as far as the records are concerned, a large amount of records. There are tiny differences. Every now and then we'll discover something that you can see on one that you can't see on the other, but that's very rare. So as far as the research capabilities, they're basically the same. It's just that the Ancestry library won't be personalized to you. Newspapers.com is another one that we have a subscription to. You can use it if you come into one of our libraries. You can also use that one from home with your library card. But there are, and same thing, it wouldn't be personalized to you. There are definitely with Ancestry, though, some limitations with the library's version. The full version of Ancestry is prohibitively expensive for the library to pay for that access to all of our library card holders. So ours is a bit limited as far as dates and some papers. So let me just give you an example. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch, one of the largest papers here in the St. Louis area. If you have a paid version of newspapers, you get access all the way up to now. Our version only goes up to, I think it's 1928. Because the library's not paying for that extra post copyright all of those years. So there are some limitations on that. If you are doing St. Louis research and you want newspapers and you home, the Globe Democrat does go up 53. The good thing, though, is that, because we're looking for those earlier ancestors anyway. But yes, so bottom line is there are a few differences, I guess more so with newspapers than with Ancestry. With Ancestry, really, the research is going to be the same. It's just that you can't personalize it to you. If you're going to come in and use Ancestry in one of our libraries, I would maybe say bring a flash drive so you can just download a bunch of records and save them to your flash drive. Ancestry also has a great feature where you can email records to yourself at home as well. So you can always do that too. And everyone has $5 worth of printing on their library card, so you can always print things also. So hopefully that answered that question.
Okay. Jim, how about the question about the old photograph?
Okay. Somebody sent in a question and they said, I have an old photograph of my ancestor. I'm trying to determine where and when it was taken. And so how might they do it? So after you've carefully examined the photo yourself, one approach is you could use AI, artificial intelligence. And so you do a quick,
Jim,
um,
you're not speaking into the speaker.
oh, sorry. Um, Let me pull up an example here real quick. All right. Okay, so um, here's 3 minutes on how to use AI to examine an old photo. We could talk about this for an hour. We could talk about this for multiple hours. So what I'll call the big three AI programs today, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude, all work well with genealogy. And so, in the simplest terms, you would go to one of those and you would upload your photo, and then you would ask AI to describe it for you. So, here's a photo, old photo. We see a man in a suit walking down the street. He has on a big hat. He's carrying something. There's people in the background. I can see what appears to be writing on the building above their heads. And so, where was this taken? When was it taken? So, a simple, for, AI prompts, you could upload this photo and you could say, describe this photo in detail and identify everything of genealogical interest. And so, just that simple of a prompt will give you a response, something along the lines of this, where it's going to describe the man, it's going to describe the scene, what he's wearing, what he's carrying. In the background, it talks about other people, mentions a woman, what she's wearing. Um, it's looking at that building, and it thinks that it says Montgomery, and it's going on to suggest, oh, well, maybe that's Montgomery Ward. Um, and then the response goes on to talk about, oh, when might this photo have been taken? And it's based on what the man is wearing, what the woman is wearing, the style of their hair. It's talking about, it's suggesting that is the late 1940s or the early 1950s. And then it goes on to talk about, where it might be taken. In this example, it can't identify a specific place or a specific city, but it's suggesting that it might be in a downtown urban area. And so this is only a subset of what it actually gave me when I asked it that simple question. So even if you are an AI beginner, if they've gotten good enough and smart enough that with even the simplest questions, it'll give you some pretty amazing responses. And then as you do it longer, you can develop more complex, more detailed prompts where you can ask it, more specific questions. So that would be one way to learn about an old photo. And it's amazing, no matter how much you look at it yourself, it always seems to pick up little details that are subtle. So there you go.
Okay.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
I wanted to add, could I add to that?
Sure.
You can also show your cousin's husband the photo, and if he happens to be a car expert, he could potentially say, Well, that was in such and such a year because they have wooden spokes on the tires of that car. I mean, AI would do that as well, I'm sure, but that was a total shock to me. I had a picture of the Zeppelin over in Scott Air Force Base area, and there was a car there, and it was an old, and he knew exactly the year.
Cool. I just want to add that Jim Bellinger has reminded us that if you're looking for old St. Louis streets, for instance, Summit Avenue, that we have the 1878 Pittsman's Atlas on our website, and that might help you identify where some of those streets are. And if you want the exact URL, it's in the answered questions on, and he's put it into the answered questions.
Also, we have that street address book in our office, in our library.
Oh,
a lot of people don't realize that we have it, but it is there.
Cool.
I'm going to
Right.
jump in. I know you can't see me, but Jim Ross did an excellent monthly meeting in February of 25 on AI. And I believe we're going to keep it longer than normal, and it's going to be moved, I think, to our classes section. The information obviously changes quickly, but the basic functions, I think you'd find it very useful if you wanted to go back and review that.
It's going to the recorded classes page as soon as I get to it, which hopefully will be sometime this afternoon.
Okay.
And we can't see it.
Do we have any new questions online?
We do not.
Okay. Kathy, how about this question about the St. Louis city censuses for 1840s and 1850s, which we are now putting up on our website?
Yes. I would like to share my screen. I have a PowerPoint.
Okay.
Hopefully this works. Can you see this?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I just have 3 slides. We have discovered, I think it was Jim Bellinger who discovered it at the library while we were having the lecture from, who did the lecture on?
Doesn't matter. Just one of our monthly meetings.
One of our monthly meetings. So these are located at Missouri History and at St. Louis County Library. And like, for instance, if you look at this 1840, this is not on our website yet, but then you look at the 1840 census from St. Louis, and there's a whole bunch of them out there, and you can go straight to the Missouri History Museum Library, and you can click on Aubuchon Angel, and you can click over here on this side and get to the actual original census with Aubuchon Angel Aubuchon, and see her. So this is coming right now. It's in development because AI doesn't do an absolutely perfect job. This also kind of might help with some of the really early enslaved people because they are listed on here as slaves, and in these really early censuses that would be really helpful to find.
Okay, and I will add to that. We will be doing an AI generated index, which Jim has already done. And then that will be our first data entry. And we will then give it to the proofreaders, and we will still continue to do the double proofing on that. So it will take us probably another 6 months, but maybe not that long if we expedite it to get it up.
Good.
And let me add something to that just to clarify what we're talking about here, because the question was that someone who had recently learned that there are St. Louis city censuses for the years 1847, 1849, 1850, 1851, 1852, 1853, 1856, and 1857. And that's what we're talking about here.
Thank you, Debbie. I forgot to read the question.
Yes, and some of them actually cover parts of
Okay.
the county, don't they? No, I guess not. Yes, some of them do cover parts of the county. because that's before the split between St. Louis City and county. So
Yes,
some of the people,
bottom
some
town,
of
all those townships that go
Correct,
way
correct.
out west.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Eileen, there's a
Mhm.
question about the waiver of residence for Civil War veterans and naturalization.
Exactly. Okay. So somebody wanted to know, where is this thing? For naturalization purposes, was there a waiver or residence that was made for Civil War veterans? And naturalization is just an interesting process in all time periods. But this was also very interesting. About 25% of the men who served in the U.S. Army and Navy during the Civil War were foreign born, and that estimate is about 200,000. The two largest immigrant groups were from Germany and Ireland. No surprise there. An act of July 1862, so this is after the Civil War started, stated that any alien aged 21 or older who had enlisted or would enlist, either through regular or volunteer service, and had been or would hereafter be honorably discharged, could be admitted to become a citizen of the United States upon his petition without any previous declaration of intention or requirement to prove more than 1 year's residency in the United States. So that means that a veteran could expedite the process, but there would still be paperwork available through the court where the naturalization petition was filed. So you need to remember that before 1906, naturalization was not a federal function. So anybody who naturalized during the Civil War did not necessarily naturalize in a federal court. They could naturalize anywhere. They didn't have to follow the same process as other people did if they were fighting. So accelerated naturalization for soldiers meant that during times of war, statutes allowed non-citizen soldiers to naturalize almost immediately after basic training without the standard 5-year residency requirement. And there was also something called the citizen soldier concept. The massive expansion of the Union Army relied heavily on immigrant populations, particularly from Ireland and Germany, which created a new inclusive definition of American citizenship based on loyalty and service. Immigrants still needed to renounce foreign allegiances before a court to become a citizen, and many of them did just that. So the process of first papers, second papers, no, if your ancestor was a soldier and an immigrant, they could naturalize with a different process, a much quicker process, because we needed the soldiers. So that's, anybody want to add anything to that one? All right, moving right along.
I think that covers that one.
Okay.
Robin, there was a question about RECA assistance.
Okay, so a lot of the library's resources since August have been devoted to this program. If you're local, if you're local, you've probably heard of this. It's been on the news. If you're not local, just quick primer here. In 1949, post World War II, there were barrels of bad stuff dumped near a creek in the North County area of St. Louis. It's called Coldwater Creek. That seeped into the groundwater. Many organizations have been fighting for years to create some sort of government compensation for the very, very large number of cancer diagnoses that came out of that area. So it's the RECA, stands for Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. And anyone in the St. Louis area who lived in one of the impacted zip codes after 1949, if they can prove that they lived there for at least 24 months and had one of certain types of cancer diagnoses, they are eligible for up to $50,000. $50,000 for survivors of a cancer diagnosis and $25,000 for children of those victims. And the library Since we have a large collection of old phone books and city and county directories, we have been stepping up and offering help for people with those RECA applications. We do not go over the application. We do not fill out the application. Most of the items in the application that you need to submit with your application, we cannot provide because it's medical records, it's birth certificates, death certificates, marriage certificates to show name changes. The DOJ does want those things to be stamped from the actual government agency. But what the library can do is we can provide you with pages from one of our old directories or phone books showing that you or your parent lived in a certain area. We have those going back to 1949 and all the way up to 2019. So they started out as Polk's Street Guides. Again, most genealogists like those because they can trace people in between census years. It shows where somebody was living, their occupation, but they're coming in handy for a completely other reason now. So what we do when people come in is we have them look through the directories. We have them let us know when they have found themselves or their parent in those directories. We make a photocopy and we give them a certification page and they send that in with their application. The DOJ wants proof that you lived there for at least 24 months. What we've been usually providing is 1 year of a directory, so say 1961, and then another one 2 years later, so say in 1963, because that shows you were there for that time span. People from all over the country have also been using our online form to request these things where we can look them up for you and send them to you by email. This is all free of charge. If you are impacted with this and you're not local, if you want to use the form, or you can use the form if you're local as well. You don't necessarily have to come in. But if you go on our website and search for RECA, just RECA, you'll find all the information for that. If you were a child when you were living in one of these affected zip codes, you would show that your parents were living there. And the DOJ is assuming that minors were living with their parents. The DOJ also assumes that married persons were living together. So if you are a female and only your husband is listed in, say, the telephone book, they, again, are assuming that you were living there as well. Most of the zip codes are in North St. Louis County in the Florissant area. There are also zip codes in St. Charles County and 2 zip codes, I believe, in the city of St. Louis. So not necessarily genealogy related, but it is a lot of what we're doing right now at the library because we're trying to help out because we do have the resources for that. Not everybody's listed in one of these. Sometimes people didn't return their card back earlier, or maybe later they were unlisted. They didn't want their phone number in there. So sometimes these don't work for everything, but I believe it's page 8 of the application, it lists other things that people can use to prove residency, voter records, W-2s. There are other things that people can use. But we have the access to the directories, so we're offering those up for people.
Robin, Connie wants to know if the phone directories are available online or just in the library.
Oh, that is a fantastic question. I'm so sorry. I forgot to mention that. So phone books, no, but the directories, the Polks and the Haynes directories, yes. I'm so glad that was asked. We have a digital archives. So if you go to our website and if you type in the search box digital archives, you will find that we have many of those directories have been digitized. Along with other things like yearbooks, which can be used to prove residency as well, because you need to have lived in a zip code, but you also could have worked or gone to school in a zip code. So we have yearbooks up there as well. We have a lot of other neat things in our archives if you have St. Louis ancestors and want to take a look. But yes, those directory pages are there. Now, keep in mind that if you're looking at them for the RECA program, they would need to be certified. So you would want to print them off, but then bring them in, and we could fill out the certification letter for you. Or like I said, use the form that we have on our website, because we'll send you a certification form with that that we sign, and the DOJ accepts that. One other thing, if you are local and you do want to come in and do this and look through the directories are only available, the print ones, at the Clark Family Branch, where the Emerson History and Genealogy Center is. Our other branches can help you with that, and they can do the certification letter for you. They would be using the online archives to do that. The print books are here with us at Clark.
Okay. Just to add to what you're saying, Robin, there are a lot of different places where you can get city directories online. So if you don't happen to have one that somebody needs, we have some print directories at our office. The University of Missouri St. Louis, they have a digital archive of directories that I think the Secretary of State's website is sponsoring. WashU has them. Missouri Historical has them. Those things are everywhere. John wants to know, Robin, if Berkeley is included in the RICA.
I believe it is. So I'm not sure if all of Berkeley is, but I know some of Berkeley is, because I know I've looked up addresses where it's kind of all hands on deck here at the History and Genealogy Department. I think we have at our highest point, we had about 250 requests in our queue for these. Yeah. So for the emails coming in, the people that filled out the online form, I think we're down to about 100 now. So so that's good. But it impacts thousands and thousands of people. So yeah. So I believe that most of Berkeley is included, but you definitely want to go to the RICA website. Just go Google RICA, and you can see all of the zip codes that are impacted.
That's a great service. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Whole
and
staff.
I wanted to add that I looked up to see what the deadline was to submit applications under RICA. And apparently the deadline is December the 31st of 2027.
Oh.
So that means it's 2 years out into the future. So if people are just first learning about this, then there's plenty of time to submit an application.
Absolutely. So you can take your time with that. I will say the application itself is 24 pages, and there are a lot of documents that are needed to prove the cancer diagnosis, to prove the residency, to prove all, who you are, if you are who you say you are. If it is children who have parents, each individual child has to be listed and sign off on that. So there is a lot to it. It's not something that you're going to be able to put together in a day. If you have to request things like marriage certificates, birth certificates, which you most likely will, because not a lot of us have those originals at home. Maybe we have copies, but they do want originals. You'll need to request all of that. The DOJ is sending those back to people, but you will need to send in the original. There have been, I'm not sure of what the exact number is, but there have been people who have received their payments. This started in August. So some of those really early people have received their money.
Okay. We only have a couple of more questions, and they were last minute questions. Eileen, there was one about burial locations. Do you have that?
We can do that real quickly. Somebody wanted to know a newspaper article about the death of Margaret Kennedy in the Post-Dispatch in 1911 included a photo. The event happened in the city of St. Louis, but she's buried in St. Louis County. And this person was looking for a reason for the place of burial. And honestly, just because somebody died someplace doesn't ever mean that that's where they're buried, because people can die anywhere. If a family has a burial plot in a different location, bodies are shipped, bodies are moved. If you're visiting a relative in another state or another city, very, very often somebody's going to move your body back to where you had maybe purchased a plot or where the rest of the family is. So I think it's really behooves everybody to kind of think of death and burial separately, because just because you died in a certain location does not mean that you're going to be buried in that location. And that's probably true more often than it's not true. People, particularly if you have made arrangements ahead of time, if you have a family plot, that's where you're likely to be buried. Or you may be cremated and, your ashes may go anywhere. So unless anybody wants to add to that, I think, there are so many different reasons why people could be buried in a different place from where they died.
Okay, good. Now, the other last minute question came from somebody who's doing German research, and they are doing 20th century German research, which is a little bit different than doing historical research because they're looking for a person who's the wife of somebody who served in World War II, and she was a German, and they were married in Germany. So I would say that the biggest thing is the records will be more available in general for the 20th century, but they will be harder to get to because of privacy laws. And the privacy laws in Germany are a lot stricter than ours. And ours are pretty strict in most cases. So you will need to find out about the privacy laws in Germany under the EU, which they now have changed from individual German laws to being EU laws. But you still may have some individual places in Germany that have some of their own requirements, such as you need to be accompanied by a German citizen who is a member of the Standesamt that you're going to look at the Standesamt records in. So a Standesamt is a county, essentially a county court. And if you want to go to the county court, you can't just look at the records for the present day people. You have to be accompanied by somebody who actually lives there in some places, which is kind of unusual, but it's to protect the records. So generally speaking, 100 years back for birth is protected, 150 years back for death is protected, and you should be wise to ask questions about the local area of what you want to access, what's protected, and how you would be able to get to it if you were looking for an ancestor who was, say, born in 1927 but married in 1947 in Germany and has a child born in 1950. And this was the question that the person had. And then the child is born in Germany, but they come to the US and she has a record that says that the person is naturalized in Kansas City and, that kind of thing. So you're going to have more difficulty finding the records because of the privacy laws and getting access to them because of the privacy laws. So that's the basic short answer to that question. And if that person wants to come and ask me some more specific questions, I'd be happy to help them get access to the records that they might need. And I'm sure the library would as well. Okay, now we had one other question that I'm going to refer to Debbie, and that was the definition of the word partner in the 1940 census. And Debbie has worked on that, so she could answer that question, I think.
Yeah, that was a question that had been sent in to us. And the question was on the 1940 census, man number 1 is designated as head of household, and man number 2 is designated partner. And the question was, do you have any ideas about what this means in terms of the relationship? And so I looked up the definition in the census records, and in the definitions, the term partner refers to 2 or more people who are not related by blood, marriage, or adoption, but share a dwelling unit. So this could apply to roommates who share financial responsibility for a house or an apartment. It could also hint at a same-sex relationship, but not necessarily so. And the census instructions that were given to the people that were collecting the information provide that if two or more people that are not related by blood or by marriage share a common abode as partners, then the instructions say that the person is supposed to write head of household for one and partner for the other. So that's the information that I was able to find from the census definitions and from the directions to the census takers.
So in short, they're using the definition of partner to mean roommate or sharing dwelling mate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think that's correct.
Okay, let me step in here because it's nearly 12 and we've got a little longer than we usually do. But let me say, you can continue these conversations with any of these people at our office and many more. Almost everybody is here at least 2 of the 3 days that we are open. We are open Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays from 9 to 12. If you want to stop in and you have a specific question, it's always good to call ahead and make sure that that person is there. We occasionally have people who just drop in, even travel. They're in town for the holidays and they just stop in, and we just kind of have a skeleton crew because it's the holidays. So thanks to everybody. I encourage people to come to the open house because all of the people on the panel, plus many more people, will be there. Maybe not Robin. Robin, you're welcome, of course, but they'll be there and you can have more one-on-one conversations. So we're going to conclude our meeting today. Our next meeting is, February, I had it right here, but I have too many notes.
So
Somebody-
Donna,
Yeah.
tell people if they're not able to come into the office, they're also welcome to email their questions in to Ask Louie. If
Yes.
they look at the button on the home page, then they can email any questions in to Ask Louie, and we'll be happy to take their questions by email.
Well, you just told them, that's great. And the email is asklouie@stlgs.org. And so you can email, you can call in, make an appointment. Our next meeting is February 14th, Living on the Frontier, a look into Missouri and Illinois. Our meetings are always the second Saturday of the month, except in December. We meet at the St. Louis County Library in their event room D. We start at 10 o'clock. And please join us if you can. So thanks again to the panel. If you have more questions, like Debbie said, send them in. And please come by and see us sometime. And I'm babbling, so we're just going to say this is the end of the meeting, and thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, and panelists, we've had lots of thank yous that I'm just acknowledging privately, but thank you all for everything.
Thank you.
Robin's got more hours than we do at their library.
And
A lot more.
recording. And this will be posted probably within 48 hours. So check the website for the recording under meetings. All right, thanks everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay,
Bye.
we're ending.